Welcome to the weekly Pistol Podcast. At the end of this hour, we want you better than when we started.
All right, Mark.
Hey.
We're back. Took a little hiatus there last week. Also in the studio, we got someone back.
Hello.
Who is back?
What up, T?
What's up, T?
T's back. And we'll discuss the little vacation or staycation, as you will, whatever it was that she was at here in a minute. But for those of you that are following, thank you. And to our subscribers, I appreciate you guys subscribing. If you're new, I'm Manny.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Tony.
And I'm T.
And sometimes she's here. So we're back again with another podcast this week. But before we get onto the topic, I just wanted to give T some time to kind of explain. I know you were on a little timeout, I guess is what we would call it, right?
A doctor put me on a little timeout. I called it crazy school. It was actually intensive outpatient therapy.
No pins allowed.
I was given a rubber pen to write with, so
Because you're dangerous.
that should just narrow things down for you. I got a rubber. I'm the member of the rubber pen club now.
Those are dangerous.
Danger.
Yeah. You can't hurt anyone with a rubber pin, Tony, if you weren't familiar with that. Well, I'm glad you're back, T.
Yeah.
It's for one podcast. Get out, spread your wings a little bit, join the fellas, and have a good podcast and
Nice.
chop it up. All right, so this week, last week struck me as kind of odd. So, and I was stewing on it, and I know we brainstorm amongst the four of us and five of us sometimes about topics, and then we get topics from our followers, which is awesome when you guys leave messages. But this week, I wanted to talk about showing up to Pistol. So I know there's a lot of people out there who follow us both on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and we appreciate you guys following us. If I wanted to talk about this because we have in the past had some officers and firefighters who definitely need help, and I know they're sitting there deciding one way or the other. Fuck, do I do this? Do I reach out to these guys? Part of the reason that we do this podcast is so that you guys understand who we are, right? We do this every week. At the very least, you know, you should know that we're here for you, and we've all had to cross that threshold of, oh shit, I gotta pick up the phone and call someone, and I have no idea who's on the other end. And humorously enough, I actually had an officer, when they reached out to us, she said, when I called the number, I thought I was gonna get the whole, if you're crazy, press 1 now.
We should do that.
I like
if
it.
you feel
That would
like
be
hurting
awesome.
yourself, press 2
If
now.
you are in a mental crisis, press 3.
Right. If you've lost your shit, press 0 to talk to Mark.
Operators are standing by.
Yeah.
He's currently not sleeping anyway.
Yeah. Call him at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
So it's not a phone bank. I answer the phone if you call, and I know T's probably doesn't like that all too much, but as of right now, if you call us, I answer the phone. We go through a whole process. It's not a big deal. But I wanted to talk to everybody because being that I'm one of the founders with Dave, there was something that was occurring that I had to go through when I did it. So I'll kind of start that because mine's a lot easier than what you guys had to go through. When I was going through my critical incident, the doctor that we were seeing, Dr. Tapia, was doing this thing where I think it was once a month, she'd have officers in her office and they'd meet for like coffee and donuts or whatever. And
Donuts.
she would ask me, she's like, hey, you should come Saturday, right? You should come by, hang out with the guys on Saturday. And I'm like, I didn't fucking kill anybody. I don't have a problem with it. Then, mind you. So I'm like, why am I going to go sit there and talk about my feelings? First of all, I wasn't going to walk into a room of killers and say that I was sad, boo-hoo-hoo, because I hear screams.
Well,
when
how
they
did you know
smoke
that
somebody.
room was full of killers to
Well,
begin with?
I didn't. And that's the point. Like, all she said were all these people have critical incidents. And for some reason in my head at the time,
You immediately went
it went to,
Oh.
because what's the ultimate, what's
Shooting.
the plateau? It's a shooting.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, most of my squad were shooters. We had been involved in shootings. I had responded to officer-involved shootings. several involving my squad. They all appear to be fine from that. I was like, why are they have problems, you know? And because of that, she kept on. This went on for like fucking 6-7 months. She's like, hey, Saturday,
Damn.
everybody's going to be there.
So
And I was
you were
like,
seeing her for counseling already?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was already my doctor.
Okay.
And so I'm like, she would tell me, you know, you sure you don't come Saturday? I'm like, Robbie, no, I fucking hear screams.
Just give it up.
Yeah. Like, what am I going to do walk in this room and tell them I hear screams? Like, I'm fucking crazy. I'm weird. I'm weak. All that shit just weighed on me. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, I understand I've never taken a life, but I got trained to take a life, right? And in my mind, I had no problem taking somebody's life if it meant mine. Now, I didn't understand the repercussions of that after the fact, but I would always look at the guys that I knew that were involved in shootings, and I'm like, you're here, they're not. So it's a win.
Sure.
Unknown to me that there was more to that win that it caught you, right? It cost you a lot to stay alive. So she just kept on, and I was like, no, not going. I'll do it myself, fix it myself. And I tried, and I failed miserably. Like, I just legitimately failed miserably. Like, the more I thought about going, the weaker I felt. Now I have to go to a fucking group. Now I got to talk to these guys and gals or whatever's in there. And so, like I said, this was going on over the time. And for those of you that are currently seeing doctors, and I know even the ones that don't reach out, you're seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist, you walk out into the lobby and you're like, that motherfucker's a cop right there. Right? So you just keep walking, and you're just as embarrassed as he is. He looks down at the magazine. You just look straight ahead and walk out. But one day, Robbie, thinking about it, she was like, it was like, you're so screwed up, you don't know what the fuck anyone's doing anyway. So she introduces me to one of those guys that goes on Saturday. And I was getting ready to get set up to go to West Coast, which I was kicking and screaming about. And I walk out, Nick stands up, and I think it was planned between those two fuckers, but anyways, it worked out. And I walk out, and she says, hey, Manny, this is Nick. Nick, this is Manny. I shake his hand. He says, hey, I'm retired cop. I got PTSD. A few of us are getting together Saturday. You should show up for coffee. And I was like, all right, what time? I'll be there.
Was Robbie standing there when
she
you
was
said
fucking livid.
that? Oh, I'm sure she was pissed.
She was looking at me like, what the fuck? And I'm like, and I looked right at her. I said, you're not a cop. You're not a cop. I wasn't going to go into any group that my doctor thought would work for me, because I had no idea what the fuck she was going to send me.
Yeah, because you
Interesting.
could be in a different kind of group and not have any connections with people. That sucks, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's true.
I've been in that group too.
Yeah.
I've been in the group. I've been in that group where you're like looking at these people going, why are you fucking
You are
sad?
crazy.
Like,
You are crazy, and you should be here. And I need out of this building really quickly.
I'm not as crazy.
And
as
I
all
also
of
need
you.
this snug jacket taken off.
Yeah.
Well, why is it tied in the back?
Yeah. You're like, now I know why I have this rubber pin.
I
Because
have,
of that.
I have to go pee.
Yeah.
Can somebody undo this?
He goes, oh.
No. No.
You're like, I'm not
Move on.
cheeking my meds. I'm really taking my meds. I'm snorting them as well, too, just so you know. So Robbie's like, what's going on? And I was like, you're not a cop. I'm not going to go somewhere that I'm not invited to by somebody who's says there are a bunch of cops there. That's not a cop. It's not going to happen. So needless to say, because I gave my word to this cop, now I'm driving home that day, and I was like, God damn it. Why did you open your fucking mouth right now and say you're going to show up? Right? Because you don't want that cop to think you're a pussy.
Yep.
Right? Well, he goes, and I told him I'd be there. So now if I don't go, now he's going to see me next time. He's like, there's that pussy there. Didn't fucking show up.
How many days did you have in between the time where you told him you'd be there and then Saturday came around? Did you have a lot of time to think about it?
I saw my doctor twice a week, so like Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it was either a Tuesday or a Thursday.
Oh.
But it was that next Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, holy shit. Right? So, and I tell my spouse, but I do exactly what you guys have probably done. Like, when you come to Pistol, you're supposed to bring your spouse, right? And that particular group, they were always invited. It was just a group that met. There was no formal name for it. And so my wife said, I said, hey, I'm going. Robbie wants me to go to this group with a bunch of fucking crazy cops. She's like, you want me to come? And I'm like, nope.
Fuck no.
Not happening. Because, my mind, I was gonna go there, leave, come home, and say, that was the dumbest thing I ever did in my life.
Yeah.
Never going back.
Worst experience ever? I
Yeah.
didn't like it.
We don't need to be there. And so Saturday rolls around, and I get up. I think it meant like at 10:30. And I get there, and I go into the room where I think everyone except Tony's seen. And I go in there, and there's like 5 or 6 cops in there. And there's like 1 or 2 spouses or whatever. And I look around, and these guys are like just the average fucking Joes, right? Just average looking dudes. Looks kind of like this fucking podcast room. And
I don't know who's that.
Thank you.
You don't be calling this. You don't be calling this side of the room average looking.
This guy was on a fucking ad.
I saw that.
Shut up, fool.
So I sit down, and I'm like, immediately, this is my perspective, and I can almost guarantee everyone's head's gonna shake. But I sit down, and immediately I get the impression that they're judging me. Right? I sit down, and I'm like, these motherfuckers are like, here's another fucking pussy. He can't handle it. Right? And I'm like, I don't want to be in this room right now.
That's what you thought they said about you, even though they're sitting there? That's stupid.
Hello?
That's stupid.
Wait till we get to you, and we think about stupidity.
I'm not here right now.
Yeah. So,
yeah, you got a turn coming.
yeah.
Gee.
So
don't talk smack.
I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh, man, these guys. Because, again, I had perceived that all of them were shooters. That was the reason that they were there. So I'm sitting there, and I thought to myself, I ain't saying a fucking word to these guys. I don't know them. And then they started bullshitting and talking and everything. And I was like, man, these guys are like, there's a normal fucking cops like me, like from big agencies, small agencies. And I was like, this is like weird. And I think the first time I went, the room was about 95% shooters. And so part of that stuck with me because the one shooter or the person that wasn't a shooter was like a kitty crimes detective. So it stood to reason that he should be fucked up.
Did you talk the first one?
No, fuck no.
You didn't say
Oh,
nothing?
you just sat there?
No, I mean, I did. They asked, do you want to introduce yourself? And I said, yeah, sure. I told them who I was with.
I'm Manny.
Yeah, that's all I said.
That's what I said. I said I was Manny.
And so I was like, I told them I was there. I said, look, I had a bad call. It was a drowning, and that was it. And they were like, all right, cool, And so they actually started asking me questions, and it's kind of like the old hang-up curse where, like, I can cuss you out on the phone or you're a cop and you talk to somebody on the phone. Very rarely do people hang up on you because it's rude. Like, career criminals will. They'll be like, fuck you, cop, right?
Bitch.
But just the average person, you're like, did you murder that person? Hey, did I lose you? No, I'm still here. I'm asking you a question. Did you murder that person? Well, what are we talking about again? But they won't hang that phone up. It's like ingrained in not being rude. So that's how it is when they start asking you questions. They're asking me questions, and I'm like, I can't just get up and walk out. Like, the door was like 12,000 miles away from me at that point.
Just slyly.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm like, so I'm sinking deeper. So finally, I'm like, fuck it. I'll just answer their questions as they asked. So they started asking questions like,
Hold on. Did they had already gone first? Everybody told their story before you?
no, it wasn't like PISTLE at the time.
Oh, it wasn't.
No, they
so
were
they
just
were just
they were
going
just
around,
talking
yeah.
about how everything was working out, and they just kind of talked, and they said, "You
Hey,
want to introduce yourself?"
who are you?
Okay.
Yeah. So, so then they had asked questions. They're like, "Hey, are you seeing Dr. Tapia?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, what meds are you on?" And I was like, "Well, that's rather personal. What meds are you on?"
Oh my gosh! Look how far you've come.
No kidding.
Did
Such
he
a
just-
baby.
Did
Yeah.
Manny just say that
What a
that's
child.
personal? Oh crap!
What a child.
Yeah.
You've grown so much.
Strange room, strange people.
Stranger danger.
I was like, "Are they gonna lock this door and bad things gonna happen to me right now?" And so we started talking, and
You wish.
yeah. So we started engaging, and it was very, the walls came down very quick on that first one. Then I left, and I was like, well, that wasn't so bad. I won't have to see him again for a month. And if they ask, I'll show back up. So I got back to the house. My wife said, what do you think? And I said, I don't need to be there. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't really get anything from it. But deep down inside, I thought, man, I can't wait till next month so that I can see these guys again, and then I can ask them questions about what they're doing or whatever. So it took about 3 times for me to go there before I finally caved in and told my wife, hey, this is somewhat beneficial. I'm around a bunch of cops who are screwed up. And so...
What did it take for you to get past the shame of not being a shooter and just having a drowning incident?
Oh, that didn't go away until much later, after Pistol had already been established.
6 months?
Oh, no.
A year?
Probably about a year, yeah, because we didn't start that Pistol until probably about a year after that.
Was it more personal than anything?
What was?
Like you feeling that you were insignificant, I guess, because everybody else was shooters? You know, like, what was that feeling like?
No, I think it's all shame. It's always shame.
Yeah, because you know, all of us here and the viewers know our stories. So I guess it would be like Mark's shooting, right? The guys that maybe didn't pull the trigger, or the guys that didn't almost get shot in the face say they're messed up. They're like, I didn't go through what Mark went through, right? Because some of those guys, I'm sure in their minds were like, I just had to play out. They're replaying what he went through.
Yeah.
So in their minds, which is worse? And we talked about this with Josh on one of our podcasts, right? There's still an officer that has to respond to Josh.
True.
Right? And that officer, I can almost guarantee, was like, I can't be fucked up because I didn't get shot. Right? And you're not going to take that away from the officer that just took a round.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right? And so for me, when I was going there, these guys were talking about, you know, Dave had lost Carlos. Dave had been shot, Brian had been shot, and Carlos was killed. And I'm sitting there with screams in my head. Right? So I'm thinking, why am I fucking here right now? Right? Like, I didn't lose my partner. I didn't take a fucking round.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get center punched in this shooting.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had a way to speak where it looked like I had basically survived the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Right? And so with that, I was sitting there and we started talking. Then me and Dave got really close and we started talking. And Dave would always tell me, he's like, bro, like, I don't like to hear your story, the screams and the repetitiveness, because there's certain things that he remembers, and I can speak on Dave because he's given me permission, but there's certain things that he remembers, and smells and odors. So a lot of that stuff, the auditory stuff, he remembers. So I just kind of trusted in Dave, and we got along really well. And then as time went on, we realized exactly how much parallels we had, because sometimes we were on the same meds, we had the same side effects, and so it was very easy for me to kind of talk to him and say, hey, did this happen to you? Or he'd ask me. I leaned on Dave a lot during that time because I didn't know what was ahead of me.
Man, that had to be helpful.
It was.
I mean, like on a level you have no idea.
Right, and so ultimately that was the foundation that was laid for what Pistol is now. Dave and I kept that pretty well situated in the same context. The way Dave and I work together is the same way that we laid Pistol out.
Right.
We laid it out exactly the same. So now fast forward to when we had Pistol, there were times where I still had shame when I'd go to group, even though I was a founding member. Dave would talk about his shooting, and I'm like, okay, let me talk about these screams, right? And then one day, I had an officer who had been involved in 3 shootings, and it was his first time there. And I told my story from almost start to finish. And he, like, after it was all done, there was probably about 6 or 7 of us in there. And after it was done, he pulled me aside. He goes, Manny, please, if you don't have to, don't repeat what you repeated. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, to me, it just was so insignificant, although it had come crashing down on me. And I said, why? And he said, because you opened up a box that I had put all that shit in, because he was hearing screams too, but he was hearing screams of like
a different
kind. Like, he had smoked somebody and the mom had come around the corner and they were just screaming at him and he couldn't get that out. The shooting, and he told me, he's like, I didn't care about the shooting. It was after effects of the shooting that occurred. And since then, I've had many people tell me, you know, you tell your story about the screams, and it jars something with me where I was on a scene and people were screaming.
That's exactly right. Like your story, and not to quantify everybody's deal, but you open, and we all do this. Each individual officer, each individual firefighter does this. When you open your story, you create this huge vortex, this huge funnel of, oh, you know what? If Manny's in there and he wasn't in a shooting, maybe I can come in.
Right.
Maybe I can come in and get help too, because I wasn't in a shooting either, or I didn't actually get shot, or it was just my partner. It's all these huge things. You guys, you all need help for everything that you're going through. And yeah.
And so, yeah, so I struggled with that, and then finally just got to a point where I realized, you know what? And it was unfortunate for what was going on at the time. Part of what broke the shame was Craig Tiger taking his life. He had come to the interviews. We had reached out, and then he had taken his life. And I thought, this guy went in front of the media and told his story. Now, granted, he was a shooter, and to me, by that point, it was irrelevant.
Yeah.
But, he really made a huge impact on me because he just spoke it, and I thought, fuck it, people are going to judge, they're going to judge. And what I ultimately found out was nobody was judging me. It was that hypervigilance of fear and stupidity that we think, the machismo that we get when you go through SWAT school, or you're going to shoot. I shot better than you, you stupid, I shot a 250.
The difference between competition like that, what you're talking about, and what we're going through is we're not enough. Ours isn't bad enough. And as long as you're holding on to that, there's only one person in the world that deserves treatment. That's the guy who lost his entire unit. And, everybody, he got shot 15 times. The guy that got shot 12 times is a coward. You can't do that. You can't quantify this stuff.
There's no really boundary for what we have,
Right.
like everybody's experience is their experience.
Your soul,
exactly.
you need to come in.
If it jarred you and it's screwing with your
Come in.
daily, there's something wrong.
It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're a genuine, loving human being.
You have some form of compassion.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like I still
Praise
have a hard
Jesus.
time telling my story in group, the full story, just because I do feel I think I feel a little bit ashamed still. Like I haven't got to the point where I'm fully okay with that. Just because no one got shot, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
It is hard to get past that point.
Yeah, it's difficult, but for me, I think of it in terms of I went down that hole by myself.
Yeah.
And there were plans that were laid, and I did use some of that by talking to Dave or Nate. And I would say, I can't do this, or, these things are going to happen, or I was not sleeping, or whatever, drinking heavily. But there was no avenue. So even now, like I tell people all the time, you guys have heard me, like, I got nothing but respect for people that show up like you guys did, because I have to be honest and say I would have never done it, right? Because my machismo was too big. I kept thinking to myself, I don't need to be there. I didn't deserve to be there. And we have far less shooters than we do non-shooters. And sometimes the group can consist of a lot of shooters. That's just by happenstance. And then other times it's an even split. Other times it's no shooters or one shooter. But to try to do this by yourself is not going to be a good outcome. So that was mine, real kind of quick there, but I don't...
Kind of quick? Nothing's ever
nothing's
kind of
quick.
quick with you.
Not from Manny.
Yeah.
No.
So I'll go, because
Just took
Tony...
the dagger and just went...
Nah, I already know they're coming. I got my shields on right here. So. But I'll go with Tony, because he was the most recent.
Oh, well, fuck.
Oh,
All right,
no,
well,
Tony.
So how did you get wind of us?
So I met a member, and actually at my place of business. So I was there to help him, which is fucked up in itself. But as I was talking to him, we kind of got into this conversation about spirituality and about how he has just been diagnosed with PTSD and how he's using all these different forms of meditation and yoga and stuff like that to really heal himself, other than pharmacology and stuff like that. And we kind of flourished from there, and he was like, at the whole end of the conversation, he was basically like, hey, man, I have a group that I go to on Monday nights at 6 p.m. or 6:30, 6 p.m., whatever. If you want to come, please feel free. Here's my number. So fast forward about a month of me just like, hey, man, no, not going to make it.
And we do it every week, by the way, not a month.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, man, not going to make it again. 2 weeks go by. 3 weeks go by. I make up my third excuse. The fourth week comes up, and he's finally like, dude, I know you're making up excuses. He's like, just come out here. I think you could get some form of benefit from it. So I compare this as I compare it almost it's exact parallel from when I lost my weight. So I thought about it for about a month. I processed it for about a month and was like, well, I really want to get to the gym. I really want to be healthy again, that type of thing. And that's the same thing I did with this group. I was like processing it. Well, what is it going to do for me? What's the benefits? What am I going to get from this? Blah, 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 blah. Well, after about a month, I go in, and the same thing with gym timidation. It's the same exact thing. I mean, you walk into this building, and here's some fucking people sitting in like a fucking circular table, and you're like, okay, this is scary. So you sit down, but the thing is Mark was there, and I kind of gravitated right next to him. So I was like, hey, Mark, what's up? Blah, 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 blah. So, go from there. And basically, it was all in my head. It's your anxieties that you make up because we're all dealing with the same shit. As everybody was sharing their stories, it's just like, wow, I know how he feels, waking up, with sweats, with a horrible dream, of just whatever event happened, and stuff like that. So I don't know, it was a very humbling experience for sure. And the fact that I'm still coming is very it speaks millions of miles to it, because I don't do shit that doesn't work. So.
Not only that, but you're actually helping tremendously.
Yeah, well.
Like you went from just, I'm here to get help to, I want to help. So now he's actually like getting his hands dirty and trying to get more people to recruit in.
Getting into this.
Because that's what we do.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing is, like, I felt an immediate connection with everybody when I walked in there, and I'm a big empathy guy. I can feel energies and stuff like that, and I fucking broke down.
So does everybody.
The first fucking meeting, I was just like,
everybody usually breaks down.
Yeah,
in the first meeting.
Exactly.
Truth.
Like,
Don't look at me when you say that.
no, but it was just like a comfort. Like, I was just like, wow, this isn't your typical run-of-the-mill therapy bullshit. Like, this
no
is
rubber pins here.
Yeah, like, this is motherfuckers
this is
chopping
nothing.
shit
this
up.
Is nothing like.
Well, no, but that's
rubber
what
pin.
it is. It's
Yeah.
people chopping shit up and knowing, like, hey, we all had our own experiences, So I don't know, it was cool.
So what do you
It's the camaraderie
After-
of warriors.
after you left that night? What did you think? In all honesty,
in all honesty, I was like, I'll think about coming back. It was one of those things. Like, I got home and I was like, I processed it for about 3 days, I think. I went through this really, really, like, weird, dark period afterwards, actually. The next Tuesday or Wednesday, I kind of reached out to the person that kind of invited me in, and I was just kind of like, whoa, like, dealing with some depression, what's going on? He's like, that's normal, it's the energy dump, blah, 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 blah. Just make sure you're at the next meeting. And when he said that, it was kind of like, okay, this is some form of a process. Maybe I do need to just go to the next meeting and see what happens from there, And here the fuck I am.
and so kind of go through how did it become beneficial? I guess was it beneficial? Clearly, because you're here.
Yeah. No, it's been extremely beneficial. I now, instead of, like the typical first responder, response is to help everyone around them, and not to let themselves be healed. But now I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, we fucking do matter, and it's time that we take over that fact and actually, like, boost ourselves up, because we're the only motherfuckers that can help ourselves, Nobody understands what we have experienced, and that's just plain and simple, military, they've experienced their own thing, but we have our own that we can't even compare that, you know. And
Right.
it's we are our own little group that need to become a unit and, you know, survive together. You know, it's sad that we have to, but we do.
So if you had advice to give to anyone about that was on the fence, like,
Yeah.
maybe I'll go, maybe
Well,
I
no,
won't.
I mean, I'll put it to you plain and simple. I've been at the place where I'm laying on my bed watching a fan circulate with a gun in my hand. You know, I mean, that's not something you want to deal with. We've all been there.
Yeah.
But why do that and feel sorry for yourself when you can just get up and come to this meeting and talk about your shit, go home feeling much fucking better.
Yeah. Knowing you're not alone.
No,
right?
and knowing you have people that you can fucking talk to instead of laying there thinking you're lonely, you know.
I think the connections that you make in the group are beneficial because you could sit there with your gun.
Exactly.
Or you could, hey, I got this phone number of this person and they know what I'm dealing with, so how about we go have coffee and
Exactly.
get me out of the house. I don't like regular people. I
Yeah.
have to be with cops. I can't even be with regular cops. I need to be with
Fucked up cops.
cops.
With
because
your own. With
yeah.
your own.
So
Just like your squad,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Right on, Tony. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you came back. And that I'm sorry for that vile shit that came out when you first started talking and got but you had to get rid of it though, right?
Yeah, it was word vomit.
That was kind of the thing that I learned from when we first started before Pistol was I had been holding that shit in so long it was toxic.
Oh, big time.
And all I was doing was just drowning with alcohol. You know, it was fermenting into a fucking pile of just putrid shit. And actually being able to talk to somebody about it or saying it out loud. You know, saying out loud that, hey, I'm scared to go to sleep. Like, I had never fucking say that out loud. The fears that I had, and then them look at you like, oh, that's pretty fucking normal.
Yeah,
right?
be like, well, yeah, we are too.
Yeah.
We're
They're like,
pretty scared to go to sleep as well.
Stop bitching about it and just do something about
Yeah,
it,
it's
dummy.
like, yeah, but no, I mean, and that's the other side is like it gives you a little kick in the ass to, hey, maybe you do fucking matter and take your life over. Like, for instance, you know, I go to float sessions now. I go to, you know, I do meditation
That's a
sessions.
whole nother
You know,
podcast.
we will do that later. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it really has been a boost to really take my life back over again. Because I kind of went back into that lull of just help everyone else and put that fucking shade up. You know?
Right. Forget about it.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, what about you? You're always taking notes, man. Are you writing another book?
You know why? Because this is just like therapy, man.
Mark, we need to write a book.
This is just like group because when I'm in there, I was like, oh man, I'm so glad I heard that. Man, I'm so glad I heard that. And if you're hearing any kind of redundancy between these two guys' story, it's, you know, it wasn't that bad when I was in it. I didn't like, you know, the stereotypes of all this stuff. I had them too. So I've only been involved with Pistol for a couple of years. And, you know, my critical incident was 15 years ago. So I was a Lone Ranger for 12 years, let's say. And I was out there by myself. And a cop friend of mine, Grant, he kept saying, hey, we got this group. It's a bunch of cops. We get together. And I was like, a bunch of cops. See, I had this paranoia and still battle that. Cops. Oh no. The last thing I want to do is be around a pile of cops because I don't trust them. I didn't trust anything to do with any of it. None of it. It was all out to get me, arrest me, and put me back into the mental institution. So when I came to Pistol, I had already been locked down in a mental hospital. And I'd seen the terror. And I'd seen people that I thought were, oh, these people are really crazy. Not me. I'm just here. I'm here as a visitor or something.
I'm a guest.
I got a special guest
like-
pass.
Yeah.
I'm
This
here
is
for
like an
I'm here for
episode.
security for the rest of you. I'm
This
going
is-
to keep you all in line.
This is like an episode
And,
of Beyond Scared Straight.
Yeah.
yeah. So I was just like, no. And when I came out of that, I started going to AA meetings because they had me convinced that, okay, you're an alcoholic. That's one of your problems, along with all these other 18 things we got you down for. And so my AA time, I hated AA At first, I loved it. I was like, you know what, this is really good, man. It's cleansing. I'm able to share. I'm able to experience and all this other stuff. And I'm not bad-mouthing AA, because at that time and that season of my life, I needed that. But I couldn't get out of that bucket, because every time I started wanting to talk about something else, I was like, and don't forget about the worst day of your life. Oh, yeah, I got to tell that story because it's Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, man, I never had any progression out of there. It got so weary in there. I got so beat up. So when my friend tells me about this place, I was like, what? Come to a group? What about a circle of cops sitting there talking about everything, and I have to share my terrible experience and everything all over again, and you know, pee my pants like I normally do when I tell this story? I was like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't
not
think
interested.
So.
Not
And I mean,
happening.
he asked me for years and years and years. I wasn't as polite as him. I'm busy. No, I was like, no,
Yeah.
no, shut up,
Fuck
quit
no.
asking.
That's why you're so fucked up.
Yeah. And
You waited too long.
Probably.
There's no helping this motherfucker.
So I just like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with that. And unlike you, had a doctor told me to go, I would have went. Because the only contact I had with any kind of real goodness or treatment was from my doctor. And I said, oh, yeah, if my doctor had told me to go, I would have been there that night. But she didn't, because she didn't know about this kind of group. And, I mean, you guys, when I first started, you guys weren't even around. And so, like I said, I was a Lone Ranger out there for the longest time, and I was coping with it on my own, and, you know, all my extra alcohol and anything else I could find for a coping mechanism. So none of that worked, and I ended up in a lockup. And when I came out of that, then I went into AA. And at the end of AA, when I realized that's not the solution I need either, the words in his invitation started sounding, maybe I should go. And I went one time, and it wasn't even his group, because that's how stupid I am. I was like, what? It's Tuesday? Oh, well, I showed up on Wednesday over at a year group.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anybody there. And I was like, I think I'd been vetted. I don't know. So I didn't know that either. So I show up, and I heard some of these stories. And immediately when I heard a couple of the stories, I was like, oh, man, these guys actually got into some horrific shootings. And guess what I felt about myself?
Yep.
Not bad enough. Why are you here? Dude, this is cowardly for you even to be talking about this. You didn't get shot.
Right.
Why are you here amongst these frickin' heroes who've gone through this trauma, this tragic stuff? And, you know, if you've heard my podcast, you know what my story is. And so immediately I felt inadequate, and you ain't got enough to be, you don't qualify to be in here. And so I'm telling my story, and I mean, I think you were there.
Oh, I remember it. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm telling my story, and before long, like normal, I started telling that story, and I'm covered in sweat. And I'm like,
Please don't yell, bang. Please don't yell, bam. Don't do it.
I won't do it. Not in the microphone. But I mean, I was so amped up, and I mean, I had so much adrenaline surging, and my hands were shaking, and I was all over. I was just like, just whatever you do, don't piss your pants in front of these people. Don't pee. That's not going to go well. So
I remember that group. It was funny because, you know, Dave sends me a text. He's like, hey, we can't let this guy leave right away. Like, we got to calm him down.
Yeah.
And then make sure he gets back. I was like, oh, we're definitely going to make sure this guy's all right.
And I was amped up because the only people I'd been telling this story to had been my doctor. And again, she had me, boom, you're not leaving until until I stopped bouncing off the walls. And that was the first public story that I had told to like a group of people. And it was rough. But just like your story, and just like you alluded to, also T, I don't know what the magic is within the group of PISTLE. But as soon as I told it amongst my comrades, I don't know if it was relief. I don't know if it was acceptance. I don't know if I just felt good that I could get it out amongst people that understood and had seen such stuff. But I instantly felt, man, there's a bond in here that me out on my own, coping with, dealing with, fighting with for the past dozen years. Way better in here than out there. And I said right then to myself, I said, I'm going to come back to this. I don't know what happened here, but I'm coming back to this.
And you did.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between telling your story in front of a room full of cops and a doctor that I love some of the doctors, like that's, you know, but they're not cops. They're not
Yeah, that would be
with the
interesting. I don't know if I could do
with
that.
the exception of my doctor, and since we're we're using names on doctors here, Dr. Amy White, great doctor, and that's who I'm currently getting treatment from. But in general, the first one that I'd seen for the first dozen years or more, she was not a cop.
Yeah.
And I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, can you imagine? Like, we were in that
Yeah, I
group,
couldn't
and
do that.
this guy here is going, yeah, I don't belong here. I was like,
yeah.
what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, if anybody belongs here, it's this motherfucker.
You're like,
But I didn't
motherfucker, you
feel
should
it.
stay.
This is the poster child of Pistol right here.
And
You
I
should
did
stay
not
for
feel
every
it, man.
day.
I was like, no, there's no way. I didn't actually get shot, so I'm a coward to be in here crying
Yeah.
amongst these folks.
Yeah, it's weird. That's
So,
why.
Yeah, so
That's-
if you guys are out there and you're thinking that, I don't have enough to come in, yeah, you do.
I don't either. Come sit by me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we move over to T,
Yeah.
at the table is only one shooter. There's only one shooter in this room.
Oh.
So that should tell you.
Mm.
And if Veronica was here, there'd still only be one shooter in this room.
Yeah.
Not because we don't have them that want to do the podcast,
Right,
but it's just that you're don't let your mind fuck with you.
right.
So for T, this will be pretty special because she'll tell you about who answered the phone when she called. But
Yeah. The only reason that I showed up at Pistol was because I was seeing the same doctor, Dr. Robbie.
Mm.
Told me to go to that. Told me to call the number, and I was so fucked up at the time, dude. I didn't know up from down. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was underwater all the time. People couldn't talk to me because it was too much information. I couldn't even take it in. I was like, fuck. I was done.
I know exactly that fucking feeling. Isn't that
Dude.
nuts?
Awesome. It's so not awesome. So
You're just like, oh.
Robbie tells me, call this number, and I call, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even know, like, I remember parts of it, but I know it was you on the other end, and you kept saying, Tanya, it's me, and I'm like, who the fuck is this?
it was grand, dude.
You're like, God?
yeah.
It's me.
And then even he told me his name, and I was like, who? Do I know you? Like, what is going on?
Man.
She was a mess, dude.
Oh, an absolute mess. Then I think the next day or something is when group was, and he made me meet him at the Starbucks next to group, and I met him, and I couldn't even I still couldn't even function. Automatically started crying because I was just so ashamed that my critical incident wasn't big enough to me. It wasn't big enough to put me as far down as it did put me.
Yeah.
So I was already crying at the freaking Starbucks.
Yeah, that phone call was those are hard for me. Like, especially because I worked with her, where you don't ever want your partners looking like, being that way. But I do remember thinking I'm glad it was me that answered the phone. That I do remember, and I wasn't expecting it, right? Because the doctors can't tell you anything about their clients or their patients or whatever. So I never got any word that anybody that I knew would be calling. So I was pretty spun up for a couple of days because I'm thinking to myself, fuck, if I didn't answer the phone, who would answer the fucking phone for her?
Fuck.
So, but the conversation, she called and she's like, I don't know who you are, but my doctor told me to call, and you run some group or something. And I'm like, who's this? And then she's like, she says her name, and I'm like, and who do you work for? And she tells me, and I'm like, it's me, right? And she's like, what? I'm like, it's me, Manny. We work together. Is this the right number to call?
I could not.
I was like, what?
There's no way I could put two and two together.
I was like,
on
are
who
you
was on the end of
fried?
this phone?
Yeah. Your mind was scrambled.
Oh
at that
my
point.
gosh. Yeah.
So
Isn't
how
that crazy though? That like circle of just lost like feeling, like you have no idea where the fuck you are in reality. Like it's insane.
It's insane, and the thought that I would never want to go back there again. Like, that was the worst. I've been injured. I've had knee surgeries.
Oh, yeah.
I was an athlete. I would never want to go back to
I totally
that
agree with that.
specific time where peer support was talking to me in a room, and I just sat there and I covered my ears because I couldn't handle any more information in my brain, and I was like, "Stop! You've got to stop." That's sad.
Yeah. No, I totally understand.
So
that one.
what
It's crazy.
about you then? What made you come back? Because I'll tell you what, I've seen a lot of officers come and go.
Desperation.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think you'd come back. You were not in a good place. So what would you say?
I was
After you left that first group, did you already in your mind say you were coming back, or you're not that far ahead?
I don't fucking remember.
No.
I don't remember, but I was doing everything that I was told to do, anything that I thought, anything that anyone would tell me that this is going to help you. I don't give a fuck what it is. We'll do it because this is the worst thing ever.
Yeah, you're just that desperate, right?
I was absolute desperation is why I came back. Because the next meeting for the next fucking 6 months, every fucking day, I walked into the room and just started bawling.
Yeah.
Like, it was ridiculous.
And there was one officer who she didn't even know, but they saw each other and both of them broke down. One cried, the other cried. It was a domino effect. We're like, what are you crying about?
That was because his story was what my nightmares were.
Oh, okay. His critical incident. Then.
His critical incident was similar to mine, but his officer actually got shot,
Right.
physically shot in the face. And man, every time I saw that dude, fuck, I just started bawling because that was my nightmares, and
Yeah.
that was the connection that I had.
Yeah.
You know, he was the one guy that it didn't matter.
So what do you? Clearly, you benefited from it, right? Coming and showing.
Yes.
What do you think it was? What do you think it was that caused that benefit?
I think it was the being able to sit in a room and have people support you, first of all, that were first responders. The support, answering the questions, like, I was taken care of. You know what I mean? I was taken care of by you guys.
You had a 907. You had a backup.
Yeah.
You had a backup.
And
on,
they were
on
just
this
as
call.
crazy as you,
Yeah.
right? Like nobody judged you. I know you struggle with that a lot. You and I have spent a lot of hours talking about shame.
Oh my gosh.
Like you have, I thought I had a lot of shame, but you have, like, I don't even remember how many times I would be like, it's okay to come through these doors. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You had it. That's why I was making fun of you about being, that's a stupid thought. Because I remember you told me you're going to talk today, and she'd be crying, I got nothing to say. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you do. And she would always preface it with,
Spill it.
well, I didn't do that, or this didn't happen. And I'm like, why are you saying that?
I did not want to tell my story because I thought
It's not worthy.
I look like 20 people were murdered right in front of me. Like, I look like shit has gone real bad.
Right.
And it wasn't. Like, I still think my incident is low on the totem pole. I always will.
Well, there
what
isn't
is
a
the
there
totem
is
pole?
there
Well,
isn't
I
a totem
know.
pole.
I get it.
It's a
That's
Scrabble
my
board.
question. Is
Yeah.
like, what
it's
is
more like
the
Scrabble.
totem pole?
It's not a totem pole.
It's more
I
like
get
a
it.
fucking assembly of
jacked up-
shit. Like, just
I get it.
I
And
like
I'm
my
sure,
analogy better.
and I'm sure that
just throw shit on a table.
I'm sure that more. Luckily, I can't remember my career, which is good. I remember one incident, and it's the one that took me out. So, I'm sure that there was more, that went on, but it was just the one that took me out that was just. It made me so bad. It was crazy.
Well, and I think for yours, and you've never done yours, and you will in time, but
yeah.
I think like with Mark, the fact that you think you were shot, then you weren't shot, but in your mind you were.
Right.
Like you were shot because you saw the whole thing unfold.
Yeah.
And for UT, that's like the same, right? Like I sometimes when I would hear your story, I think to myself, do you ever think that you're living in some warped reality where your partner was shot and now you're in this other reality where they're lying to you and they're saying he's not shot and now you're seeing him? Like, my mind, like, because I've had...
Man, that's a Matrix thought.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, what is reality?
Technically, I did see it because in my nightmares, I saw it every night.
Right.
Yeah.
So it became believable almost.
It became my truth.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But then if you saw
I've
him,
lived
you
that.
knew that wasn't true.
Oh my gosh. When I saw
Right?
it, I would start bawling.
Yeah.
The first time I saw him after my incident, the other officer, who I thought got shot, I just started bawling because in my head, he was dead. And just immediate, you know.
Well, and see, and that's the thing. The guy that you looked at, he said the same thing because his partner was shot. So he would say, you can't be here right now, right? Because you're shot. I saw it, right? And so that goes back to where we started, comes full circle, where, yes, you should be here at Pistol, but so should the guy who saw you get shot.
Yeah.
Because in his world, you got shot, right? In his world, you got shot. And you're standing there, alive and well, with no holes, talking, functioning, but in his world, he saw you get you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the easy ones are at the table, right? We all have a critical incident, and we can speak to our subscribers and say, you've heard our stories, you know our stories, you know we belong here. But there are you guys out there who were Mark's partner that saw something that are staying behind saying, I don't belong there.
I mean, yeah, like, oh, that's just something I filed.
Right. I just put it away.
Or they were afraid of treatment and they stayed on the job in silence, suffering.
Right.
And had they gotten that treatment, they'd been head and shoulders above where they are today.
Well, yeah, and it's,
15 years later.
You can always reach out to us. And, at the very least, you can reach out to us on YouTube. If you're watching us on the regular, there's 4 of us here that you see us every week. So, I mean, if you reach out to one of us, somebody's going to respond back and say, what kind of help do you need? And we'll get you directed in the right place. Maybe not coming to group is what you need, but you need a therapist or you need somebody to talk to. I'd rather you reach out to us and me or someone here filter you off somewhere completely different and you get the help you need than not. For us, it's not a competition. It's not, don't go to fucking Safeway, come to Fry's kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
This is an ultimate goal.
Right. It doesn't matter.
This isn't a competition.
We'll send you, we have scholarships. If we have to, we can get you scholarships somewhere to some treatment. We won't send you to the Rubber Pin Club.
No.
But you did graduate, right?
I graduated.
Oh.
I got a certificate and everything.
Yeah.
No way.
It was a hand painting.
Yeah.
It was
Did
bizarre.
you put it up
but
on the wall?
No.
Oh, it's coming.
I've seen your house.
She
Fucking
knew.
framed.
You got no space on your walls.
The counselor that handed it to me goes, "You probably don't want this, and if you want to rip it up, you can." And
It's gonna be
she
my
handed it to
toilet
me,
paper.
and I just
No.
ripped it.
You ripped it?
dude.
I would have.
You earned that.
I would have paid $50 for that thing.
Oh, you earned that.
I would have wiped
I-
my
and I-
ass with it.
No, I would have.
Yeah.
I would have
Oh,
got a
thank you,
Xerox
toilet paper.
and whited your name out and put my name in there
No.
for credentials.
That's
I'm done
horrible.
graduated.
Well, you know what that means. You have no evidence that you graduated, so you got to go through it again to get that fucking.
Oh, God.
You got to go through that
Do
again.
you still have the
to
rubber
get that
pen?
fucking.
I do still have the rubber
I
pen.
might need that.
I have it.
I might need
You
that.
have one.
I have
one.
Yeah, I have one. She gave it to me, so I have it. So, all right. As always, I appreciate you guys coming out. We got to get to the next one before Tony runs out of time.
Yep.
So, as always, to you guys and all our subscribers out there hiding on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, to us and those like us,